I'm Brad Konik, CEO of Konik Technical Talent Network. For those of you that are not familiar with us, we are a technical recruiting firm based out of Minneapolis. We've placed over 20,000 candidates across the Midwest. Our areas of specialty are AEC, engineering, and manufacturing. I'll jump into each one of these. For AEC, basically we cover all areas, which would be architecture, engineering, and construction as it's related to to building systems. So from Revit designers to licensed architects, from HVAC, plumbing, piping in the engineering side, superintendents to project managers on the construction side. For engineering, we've got management level positions, as well as product development, R&D. This includes both technicians and engineers, as well as we do quite a bit with computer-aided design on the engineering side of it. And then finally, for manufacturing, a quick snapshot of our capabilities would be in operations, quality, production, and logistics. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we do. If you are interested in learning more, we'll post a link to our website, koniknetwork.com. I see that my business partner, Tom, just took care of that. So that's in the comments section. I think more importantly, what I'd want everyone to know about our company is our core purpose, which is to positively impact people's lives. This includes our clients, our candidates, our community, and everyone within our entire network. And it's part of the reason why we decided for 2023 to offer up the leadership series at no charge to our entire network. We wanted to kind of expand the reach of this leadership series. So our core purpose also inspired us in 2020 to create what we call our responsibility campaign, a creative little name there, response-ability. To basically what we did was we partnered with 5 local nonprofit organizations. Their logos are all displayed here. And it's basically through volunteering, through participating in their fundraising events, and also providing sponsorship to these organizations that we feel like we can have a positive impact on these organizations and the people that they serve. I'll quickly just run through the organizations we work with. Hope for Youth, you'll see, is listed there. They help homeless youth through drop-in centers, through transitional housing, and also they provide mental health support and much, much more. Washburn Center for Children, they have amazing programs, and they're doing amazing things with children who suffer from mental health issues. It's just a fantastic organization. Beyond the Yellow Ribbon, that's in the top right there, or right side. They provide support and resources to veterans and also their families. Cookie Cart, the top one there. They have a bakery actually just down the street from us here in Northeast Minneapolis. They provide first job and leadership training to underprivileged youth. Just an incredible organization. And then finally, Avivo, who's basically, they've been helping Minnesotans recover from addiction, find housing and employment. So these are the organizations that we work with. The organizations, their employees, and the people they serve are incredible. They blow my mind, and they inspire me and my entire team to try to work harder so that we can expand our responsibility campaign and become a vessel for positive change within our community. So I would just, if any of you are interested in learning more about these organizations, about our responsibility campaign, or how you can get involved, please reach out to us. We'd love to introduce you to some of these organizations. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. If you haven't already registered for the remaining 4 sessions, we'll be sending out a link for you to do so. So if you've already participated in 1 or 2 of the sessions, or if today's your first and it strikes a chord with you, please consider joining us for the remaining 4 sessions. we'd love to have you. So administratively, during the presentation, if you do have a question, there is a question box separate from the comments box. So just make note of that. You can post your questions into the questions box, and I'll be keeping an eye out for that. And as best that I can, either during the presentation, I'll pose the questions to Adam, or I'll queue them up. We are going to have a short 15-minute Q&A session following the presentation. So if you're able to stick around, please do so. We'd love to have you. So with that, I'll introduce our presenter. Adam Carroll is with us today and will be with us for the entire leadership series. He is the founder of Renzo Experience, leadership development and culture consulting firm, which is based out of the Midwest. Adam has worked with thousands of leaders to create clarity and alignment within their organizations. We're super excited to have him here today. He is a two-time TED-Talk speaker. One of his talks has exceeded 6 million views on YouTube. So again, excited to have him here today. And I hope that Konik positively impacts your lives today. So with that, Adam, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Brad. Well, first of all, I really want to say I so appreciate the mission behind Konik, positively impacting the environment and the community in which they live and operate. Obviously, with 60 plus folks on the webinar today, and we've had hundreds of other people comment about the recordings from session 1 and 2. It's obviously impacting people, and today's content will do exactly the same. I mentioned before some of you got on that today might feel a little bit like marriage therapy. So just know that the content I'm sharing, I've tested at home and it works pretty well. So I'm going to share it with you here. It also works in organizations large and small, which my partners and I have laid into hundreds of other companies, some of this nomenclature and verbiage that we'll use today. So I encourage you to take some notes throughout the content. And more importantly, what I want you to do is not just take notes, but actually take what you learned today and go apply it. Just test it. I'm going to leave you at the end with a takeaway that you can go back today and the remaining hours of the day and just test on someone, whether it's on your team, up the chain, your children, your spouse. I'm just going to give you this takeaway to go practice what we're going to learn today, because I found if you sit through an hour-long webinar and you never use the information, what you just got is self-esteem. It's not self-esteem, it's shelf-esteem. It goes on the bookshelf and you go, I learned that one time, I just never used it. So here's what we're going to talk about today: setting crystal clear expectations and getting others excited about them. Before I dive completely in, I want to do a quick review of sessions 1 and 2, because as I mentioned previously, each of the sessions really do build upon themselves. So what we're teaching is a framework all the way along that makes people better leaders. And you'll hear me say from time to time that people don't leave companies, they leave people. People don't leave companies, they leave people. So think about a company that you've left in the past. Was it because of the overall company, or was it maybe 1 or 2 individuals that were there that really had you questioning whether or not that was the right place? So people don't leave companies, they leave people. And by that, we believe there are 3 fundamental responsibilities of leaders. And very simply, number 1 is they craft a vision. And a vision is something we talked about in session number 1. It was all around clarity. And the more clear your team is about what your vision is, then the more able they are to show up every day and do meaningful, purposeful work, right? So number 1, leaders craft a vision. Number 2, they build alignment. And what I mean by building alignment is you're making sure that everyone on your team is all rowing or swimming in the same direction. And when you have a very clear vision and you have an aligned team, what becomes very easy for leaders is number 3, and that's championing execution. And that means actually doing the tasks necessary to accomplish whatever vision you've set for yourself and your team. So the 3 fundamental responsibilities of leaders: craft a vision, build alignment, champion execution. Now, they're very similar in terms of what your direct reports want. They want a vision, they want alignment, and they want to do purposeful work. And that's the third thing that your team members are really craving from the leader. So we're going to talk today about how do you craft that purposeful work, but also set the expectations properly to make sure that they're doing what clearly is expected of them. So the analogy I get for clarity on alignment and purpose is this. Let's assume that if we're talking CAP, clarity, alignment, and purpose, the conversation goes something like this. Hey, this bus is going to San Diego. And when we get to San Diego, we're going to have an amazing time. It's a city that has 320 days of sun a year, great food, great beaches, live music. You're going to love it. It's an amazing place to go. The alignment piece is, does everyone on the bus know that we're going to San Diego? Because I'm going to make a broad-based assumption here that someone on your team somewhere, though they heard the bus is going to San Diego, is thinking to themselves, man, I can't wait to see the Golden Gate Bridge. This is going to be awesome, right? Somebody's thinking, yeah, I've heard the Riverwalk is really cool this time of year. Whether you know it or not, someone on your team is out of alignment in terms of what the vision is. If the vision is we're going to San Diego, make sure everyone is in alignment on that. And then lastly, purpose. And the purpose is really, it amounts to talking to your team from the context of this is why you're on the bus, because you bring the fun whenever we go to a big city. Someone else might be, because you are so good at the details, you're going to know every single restaurant that we should be eating at or where the live music is at night. And you start to assign that purpose to individual people. Now everyone's working together to accomplish the bigger vision. So this was session one, clarity, alignment, and purpose. Just as a tease, you can always go back to the domain koniknetwork.com/leadership series. And I'm sure Tom will put it in the chat box again. If you go to that link, you can sign up for all the subsequent sessions. And you can also go back and watch the recordings from the first two. So if you are so inclined, feel free to go back and do that. The second session, we talked about the framework around difficult conversations. And I teed this up with two basic slides, which I'm going to show you. The first one is, how do you plan? Now, there is a statement out there, it's a statistic that says that for every 1 minute you plan, you save 4 minutes. For every 1 minute you plan, you save 4. So if you spent 15 minutes identifying how to have a difficult conversation, you'll save an hour of either worrying about it, lamenting about it, a longer conversation than was necessary, maybe a meandering, wandering conversation that actually didn't get the point across. So for every 1 minute you plan, you save 4. Here is the planning process for a proactive, difficult conversation. The first question is, who will be involved? If it's, let's say, Brad and myself, then I know that the two of us are involved in this conversation. What are the communication styles involved? And I shared this in session 2. Communication styles really boil down to how do you experience someone on the speed and temperature, a varying degree of speed and temperature. So I might experience Brad as warm and fast. And Brad being warm and fast, what I know is that he loves big ideas, right? That he might be prone to go off track every now and again. These are just things I know about someone who I experience as warm and fast, all shared in session 2. What can you do in advance to make each person more comfortable was the next question. That might mean you let them know you'd like to have a difficult conversation. It might mean you just spring it on someone who is more cold and fast because they don't really need advanced planning. They're just going to tell you what's so. And then last but not least, what signs of tension should you look for? Should you look for nervous fidgeting? Should you look for looking away, avoiding eye contact? Is it crossing your arms and legs and just being completely shut off? Or that flushed red sign where blood is actually flowing to their head so it comes up by their neck? What signs should you look for? So this is all step 1 in the planning process. Step 2 looks like this. What is the purpose of us having the conversation? Now, there's going to be 5 or 6 buckets here. So each of these buckets allows you to build out a proactive, difficult conversation. So what is the purpose? Brad, the purpose of our conversation is, I'd like to talk to you about next month's session and how I think we can improve X, Y, and Z. Here's my goal. This might be bucket number 2. My goal is at the end of our conversation, you and I both feel really good about the ideas that we've generated, and we create an action plan to make it happen. Here's the rationale. we had 130 people register and only 70 showed up. So we're missing some. So I'd like to figure out, how do we really engage people at the right way? These are just issues and rationale. So I'm curious, what ideas do you have? Here are the actions we can take. Here's the reactions that Brad may have to this conversation at a very high level. And I go into this much deeper in session 2, but at a very high level, these 5 or 6 buckets, if we include goals, become the most formulaic way to have a difficult conversation, whether it's with your supervisor, whether it's with a direct report, whether it's with a contractor at home who's not getting the job done, could be with your kids, your significant other. It really doesn't matter who you're having the difficult conversation with. This framework flat out works. That was session 2. Now we're going to get into session 3, and I'm going to start out with a really bold statement. This is a piece of advice that I got from someone very wise. They said, uncommunicated expectations are just pre-planned resentments. Uncommunicated expectations are just pre-planned resentments. Now, it's usually here where I'm on stage and I drop the mic and walk off, because this is probably enough for people to get where we're going today. But I want to dig into this. I'm pretty sure this was said by a very wise marriage therapist. Don't quote me on it. But this is the question or questions that I want to ask you right off the bat. And I'm actually going to stop my screen share and go back to you all, because I'd like to see in the chat, how many of you would say that there is a difference in your home if you said clean your room, your children's definition of a clean room and yours is different? Just give me a yes or a thumbs up if you would. How many of you would say that? Nick says yes. Jake says yes. Chad's a yes. Rob, John, Asano, Jolin, Brad, thumbs up, definitely. So there is a big difference when we have an expectation and we set that with our families, if we have not been very clear in what that expectation is. And I want to share with you just a quick story to illustrate what I mean by this. I travel quite a bit with my gig. And for what it's worth, my dad did the same when he was parenting kids in their preteen and teenage years, as I am. My dad traveled a lot. But one of the things I remember distinctly from growing up was when my dad got home from a trip, he would walk in the door, he'd say, honey, I'm home. And my mom would say, everyone get up, let's greet your dad at the door. And we would all get up from the couch or whatever it was we were doing. And we would race like a sitcom or a 50s era family. We'd race to the back door and we'd give my dad a big hug. And I grew up believing that's what you did, that when dad or mom came home from work, you would run to the back door and give them a big hug. So imagine my surprise that as my children got older, like to the teenage years and beyond, that when I got home, they were probably up in their room gaming, or at the very least, they were on their couch and they gave me one of these when I walked in the door. About the only person that was really greeting me, not even a person, the only thing that was greeting me at the door was my dog, my beloved Murdoch, who would come running to my legs, give me a big hug and greet me with all the love and adoration that dogs do. But then I would be frustrated that my family was all just sitting around watching Dateline or whatever it is they were watching. And I remember thinking, why does this frustrate me so much? And so I said to my wife, she said, you seem a little put off tonight. I had just gotten back from a trip. And I said, well, candidly, I just thought I might get a different response when I walked in the door. I've been gone for 4 days. And she said, Adam, what were you expecting? And then it hit me. I have these expectations of the people in my life that I'm not clearly defining what I would appreciate for them or what would make my life better if they would do that for me or with me. And this is happening in companies all over the place. So I'm going to give you another example. And I want you to just think, is this happening for you, either at home or is it happening at work? I'm going to give you one more home example, and then we'll dive into some of the work examples. If I leave my home in the morning and I assume that my boys, who are both in high school, that if they beat me home, because I'm out on appointments or I'm traveling or what have you, if they beat me home and the light on the dishwasher is green, meaning they're clean, I'm going to assume that as soon as they see that, they're going to empty the dishwasher, as you'll see. And so if my expectation is empty the dishwasher, and I come home and I've not clarified that expectation of them, and the dishwasher is not empty, who is that on? Is that on them or is that on me for having not set the expectation? Pretty obvious, right? So here's my little secret. What I've done in a more passive aggressive stance is I will, if this happens over and over again, I'll generally just pull the cables from one of their computers or both of their computers, and I stick them in the back or under the dishes in the dishwasher, so that when they do get home and they call me and say, "Dad, why is my computer not working?" I go, "I don't know. Maybe you should check the dishwasher." And then they get the point. It's very passive aggressive, but it works. Um, we don't do that anymore. Now what we do is this. Now what we do is we have a little whiteboard that sits on the counter. And at the end of their school day, they know to check that little bulletin board, if you will, like a remarkable tablet kind of thing. They know exactly what's going to be listed there for things that they need to do before they start gaming or play with their friends or whatever. That is our expectations list. And we clarify exactly what we expect of them in the moment. And lo and behold, when we get home, all those things, generally speaking, are done, right? So this is one example. Let me give you another. How many of you on the personal side have ever ended the workday on a Friday and then you get this? Well, I thought we'd finish this project this weekend. And you and I both know that this project is not a like 2-hour project. This is a full weekend project. And it's not been talked about. It was not predefined, but one of you had an idea about what was going to get done. And the other one had an idea about what was not going to get done that weekend. And as a result, there becomes some conflict between the two. So one of the ways around this, very simply, is this. Around Tuesday or Wednesday, I ask my significant other, I will ask my teammates, "Hey, what are your expectations for the weekend?" And I ask them that because I would like to know where they're at for the weekend so that I'm also planning something. And they might even ask me back, "What are your expectations for the weekend?" Because uncommunicated expectations are merely pre-planned resentments. If my wife expects me to build this thing in the backyard, and by the way, Hammers and I don't always get along. I can manage a screw gun from time to time. But if she assumed I was going to build this in a weekend, she would be sorely mistaken. And yet that expectation sometimes hangs out there. So I just want you to imagine, does this happen? Last but not least, some of you may have been promoted into another role. Maybe you got a leadership role from where you previously were. And what you failed to do at some point was hit the reset button. And what I mean by that is someone on your team is thinking, "Well, I didn't think anything would change under the new leadership." Meaning their expectation was, "Oh, this is how Julie or Jim used to run the department. So clearly Carl or Carrie are going to run it exactly the same." That's the expectation. And as a leader, particularly in a new role, one of the first things you ought to do is walk in and say, "Hey, I would like to fundamentally hit the reset button on the department. And the reason we're doing this is I would love to have all of you, right? I'd love to have all of you involved in us understanding the expectations of each of us moving forward. Because it may have been a long time since Julie or Jim really defined what the expectations were. So let's just reset the expectations right here." It's the reset button conversation that we're going to talk about here in a bit. Okay, so here's how we get there. These are questions to clarify expectations. And as I list these out, these are just some examples of the hundreds that you could be asking. But I consider these low-hanging fruit questions that you could and should be asking with your team and your family immediately. The first one is, what are your expectations of me as your leader? The reason this is an important question is one company we were working within, there was an individual who was maybe a second or third level person in the company, said, "I'm really frustrated." And when we as the consultant said, "Share with us your frustrations so we can help identify how to fix it," they said, I need to spend more time with my leader. I mean, I think really I should be with them 2 or 3 hours a week." And what they were asking was they wanted guidance and mentorship, but they were asking for an amount of time that was not a reasonable and legitimate expectation of the leader, given what needed to get done. So we need to ask, hey, what are your expectations of me as your leader? The second thing, how am I living up to those? So in this case, if that person had said, I really need to be with you 3 hours a week. That's my expectation. Well, how am I living up to that? Not well. I barely get 30 minutes of your time. Then the leader might say, we need to chat about how to manage and clarify some of the expectations because I'm not sure that's manageable. Do you think my expectations of you are clearly defined? Do you think my expectations, mine as your leader, are clearly defined? I will tell you right now, there are members of my team, and we have these chats on a regular basis. At some point, would tell me, AC, I'm not super clear on what you want me to do on this. And we look at that from two different angles. Number one, I'm super glad, I'm relieved that they are comfortable telling me that. And number two, I'm a little frustrated that with myself that I haven't been more clear about what those expectations are. So this is a great question. Last, how would you like to maintain clarity and alignment moving forward? Now, this is a really critical question for leaders to ask, particularly in a virtual environment. All of us who are working from home, doing remote work, maybe we're doing hybrid work, our assumption is that we're all on the same page. But it's probably a faulty assumption if it's been 5 days since any of us have even locked eyes that aren't between a computer screen, right? So, because we're not really locking eyes. I'm staring directly at the computer, at the camera, but we're not really locking eyes because I can't tell your body language or how you're receiving it. So if we're not doing that, one of the things that's critical with your team is understanding how would you like to maintain clarity and alignment. One of your teammates might say, you know, what would be really helpful is once a day, can we do like a 5-minute check-in? Just 5 minutes, end of the day, middle of the day. I just want to know that I'm working on the right things. And if that's what they need, if you're a leader who's really empowering that person, then by all means, see if you can carve out the 5 minutes to give them. If someone says, hey, on Mondays, we need to have that level 10 meeting if you're an EOS company, or we need to have more huddles, more scrums to figure out what we're working on, then decide on how you do that, but build out that system as a team. So here is a takeaway question that I'd like you to answer. How easy or how receivable would the answers to these questions be on both your direct reports, yourself, and maybe even up the chain? Meaning, is it comfortable to have these conversations with them, or would it feel completely awkward? And so I'm going to take a quick survey here in the chat. Would this be awkward or would this be normal? Would it feel normal to have these kinds of conversations with your team? Because where we're going from here is I'm going to share with you why it might feel that way and how we can make it feel better. Okay, I'm seeing one normal so far. That's good. Semi-normal. Thank you, Shannon. Normal a majority of the time. This is good. Jake said semi-normal, normal. No one is saying this would feel totally weird. EOS, good. This would be a normal thing. I'll be honest, it would be awkward. Thank you, Ricky. Combo with different groups for sure. Needs to be more intentional. This is great. In our organization, this is normal. Cool, Nick. I think well-received is a great answer here, Brad. So this is the deal. The reason that this would either be semi-normal, abnormal, or feel awkward is there is an idea known as Johari's window. And Johari's window there's nothing magic about the name. It was Joseph and Harrington, two guys in the 1970s that created this idea. They smushed their names together and it became Johari's window. This is basically, this is a way of sort of judging what your own understanding of yourself and your team is. So let me explain what Johari's window suggests. There is an area of your life that is known to you, known to yourself, and an area that is known to others. And in the Johari's window lexicon, they call that the arena. So if you have a brand new employee, someone that's brand new to either your team or to the company, someone that's been hired in the last 0 to 6 months, let's say, maybe even a year, their arena with you is very small. It's growing day by day, but it's fairly small when people first get started. And when the arena is small, it's hard to have a critical conversation like, how am I doing as your leader? Because the new hire is like, I don't know if I can trust this person. I've said things in other companies that got me in trouble. I tend to be pretty honest, but I don't know if I can be honest here. So we need to begin to expand the arena, and we expand the arena in two ways. The other areas of the window are these areas that are unknown to yourself and areas that are unknown to others. So in the quadrant that is known to others, but is unknown to yourself, which means other people know this about you, but you yourself don't perceive this. Joseph and Harrington called this your blind spot. And each of us has a blind spot. The blind spot is, oh, I didn't realize that me being 5 minutes late to every meeting was so off-putting to 60% of the office. I didn't realize that. That's a blind spot. Someone might say, now, I kid you not, this was a real life scenario. There was a woman who she would clip her fingernails every Thursday afternoon at her desk, and it would drive her cubicle mate absolutely bananas, to the point that it was raised to an HR issue. Now, why they couldn't just have that conversation, it points to an arena problem, but they should have. And so this was a blind spot for the woman that was clipping her fingernails on Thursday afternoons, that it was bothersome to other people. For her, it was just like, well, it's just normal. It's something I do. But it was a blind spot. So unknown to self, but known to others. Then we have what is known to self, but unknown to others. And these are the things that you personally know about you, but others don't quite know about you. This is called the facade. And the facade would be things like you saying to someone, oh, that CRM system, I know it inside out, right? Yeah, I am old hat at that software. And deep down, you're like, I have no idea what that software is or how to use it. That would be a facade. It is known to you, but it is unknown to others. Something like other people see you as being very charismatic and confident, and known to self is, I have a ton of anxiety in large groups. That might be a facade that you have. So there's two things that we can do to expand the arena. If you want to go into the blind spot area, meaning you're moving to the right from the arena, you're expanding it out that way. Things that are unknown to self require that you ask for feedback. And the feedback, much like the expectation conversation, goes like this. I'd like to know how you see me limiting myself. Is there anything I'm doing that I should be doing differently to be a better manager for you? That's asking for feedback and digging into blind spots, because someone might say, when I text you, I actually really expect a text back within like 5 minutes. And it can be a day and a half before I get a text message from you. That's a blind spot. I apologize. I didn't realize that you were expecting a text back that soon. My parameter on responding on that is way different, right? So I appreciate you bringing that to my concern. The facade, right? So moving into blind spot is asking for feedback. To move into the facade from the arena, expanding that arena down and out, requires disclosure. And it would look like this. Brad, I apologize. You keep talking about this software. I have no idea what you're talking about. I know I should know that in my field, but maybe I'm using it under a different name or something. I don't know what that is. And when we disclose and when we ask for feedback, a couple of really magical things happen. Number one, we become more vulnerable to the people that we work with, because we can say, hey, I'm sorry, I have faults. I don't know that. And now it expands the trust level that that person has with us, as well expanding the arena. So for anyone that says, hey, it would feel a little awkward having the conversations from the previous slide with my team, the goal might be to continually expand the arena. And you do that by asking for feedback. Hey, how do you think that meeting went? What could I do differently? And then disclosing. I feel like I'm pretty good at presenting, but I just don't know. What do you think? How did that go? Right now I'm disclosing. I'm uncomfortable with my own presenting skills, right? The last quadrant, unknown to self and unknown to others, is the unknown unknown. And this is where we're learning and growing together. This is exploration and discovery, brainstorming, trying things, whatever it may be. The unknown unknown is sort of the vast, unexperienced area that both of us are trying to get to together, right? So, this is Johari's window, a good idea of how do you make sure that these conversations are a little bit more palatable, they're easier to have, continually expand the arena, okay? Hopefully that is clear. And if there are questions, by all means, ask those questions in the Q&A, and we'll get to them here in a bit. Okay. Now to one of the magic money slides. This is going to help you at home. It's going to help you at work. And I started out by saying, how do you set crystal clear expectations and get people excited about their participation in those? So there is this notion known as shared ownership. And before I dig into this, I'm going to stop my share and tell you just a quick story. And I may have told this in session 2. So if I did and you were there, forgive me. But for those who are new to today's session, I'll tell it quickly. My son was having a 9th grade birthday party, and he's now 15. So this has been a few years, but we were going to take him to a G League basketball game. And he walked in one afternoon, slammed the back door, storms up the stairs to his room, slams his bedroom door. And my wife followed in a huff right after him. And I came out of my office and I said, hey, what's going on? And she said, we were in the car. We were talking about his birthday party. And he said, we're going to have pizza. We're going to have Dippin' Dots. We're going to have soda. We're going to have candy and popcorn. And he was talking about where they were going to have that they were going to have all those things at Wells Fargo Arena in downtown Des Moines. And my wife said to him, no, Davis, we're going to have pizza and cake at home. And then we'll take you and your friends to the well, but we're not going to have anything there. And he was so frustrated, comes in, storms in, slams the door, up the stairs, slams his bedroom door. And about that time, my father called and he said, hey, are any of the kids home? I said, no, Dad. Well, one is, but he's in no mood to talk. And he said, well, what happened? And I shared the story. And my dad gave me this great advice. He said, can I ask you a couple of things about what just happened? And he said, first of all, did Davis have any information about the party? Did he know there was a budget? Did he know there was a plan for food and drink and all that? Having it at home versus the well? I said, no, there was no information. Candidly, I didn't know there was a budget for his party. He said, did he have any decision-making ability? Did he decide how many kids would come or what the food choices would be, or certain number of kids meant having food or not having food? I said, no, there was no decision-making on his part whatsoever. He said, so it sounds like there was no information and no decision-making, but he's dealing with the consequences of this. And I said, that's exactly what this sounds like. He said, this is a concept we're working on called shared ownership. And I found it so apropos in companies today. I'm going to go back and share my screen with y'all. But shared ownership requires 3 things. It requires information, it requires decision-making, and it requires consequences. So think about this. If we want to get people really excited about setting expectations, the expectations maybe we set for them, the best way to do that would be to do it through shared ownership. And what that might look like with a new employee or someone that's worked on your team for some time is to say, hey, let's talk about this project. Let's share all the information that we have about it. Do a quick 30-minute clarity and alignment meeting. Now, what decisions do we need to make? What are the things in play right now that need to get done? By when? By whom? Let's define and decide that so we can really clarify our expectations. And what would be the consequences of not getting this done? So just so we're all clear, if we don't get these metrics, these KPIs dialed in and done by the time we're all agreeing to, what happens? Do we lose face with the client? Are we in threat of losing the deal? Is there a consequence for each other in terms of losing trust, credibility? What does that look like? And if you talk about that as a team, you're doing a couple things. You're defining very clearly what the expectations are. And secondly, you are creating shared ownership within the entire group because there's information, there's decision-making, and there's consequences, not just with 1 or 2, but with everyone that's in the room at the time. The majority of companies that I've encountered that are having issues with this or the absence of this make decisions on high with 1 or 2 people and limited information. They push all the decisions down to the people who probably have some insight and may be able to even offer some good ideas, but they're the ones who deal with the consequences of the decisions made on high. And they're frustrated. And then the leaders say, why won't these people toe the line? The reason is they never felt like they were shared ownership in the first place. So if they have a say, if they have the information and they help make the decision and they understood the consequences, they may be more fired up and excited and empowered to execute on whatever your expectations were. So keep that in mind. Shared ownership requires these three things. Think about this, especially on the next time you go on a family vacation. On our family vacations today, using this information, we do planning meetings right up to the day we leave. And we go, okay, let's talk about all the information about today and travel and where we're going to be and how much we're going to spend. We have some decisions to make. This is the budget per day. So if we go over budget, it means we're going to, not spend somewhere else. These are the consequences. And amazingly, as my kids got older and older, they started asking for it. Hey, are we going to do the planning thing before the trip? Hey, are we going to know how much we get to spend before we go? They start asking for it because they want to know what the expectations are as well. And we have all, if we have kids or we have a significant other or we've ever been traveling with someone else, we all know that feeling of having an expectation something changes and then just let all the air out of our balloon, right? So keep in mind shared ownership with your team and others. This is another reason why. There's a great book, if you've not read it, it's called Drive by Daniel Pink. And in this book, Daniel's a researcher, and he found that there are really three fundamental things that drive people's motivation at work. And here's what he said. The three elements of true motivation are autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So when we talk about how do we get people excited about the expectations that are set, let's break these down one by one. Autonomy means I'm going to set some expectations, or we're going to set them together using shared ownership. But I'm going to give you full reign. Once you know what the expectations are, you know what's expected, and I have it that you can go do that on your own. I'm not going to be micromanaging you or watching over your shoulder. You have full autonomy. But what I want you to know is, or I should say, and what I want you to know is, I am always here. I'm always here if you need me. So if there are any questions or there's a lack of clarity, come find me, but you have the autonomy to go work on this on your own. The second one is mastery. And this is really key. Mastery is the idea, in my mind, first of all of us should be in pursuit of mastery of some kind in our life. Some of you are in pursuit of design and engineering mastery. Some people are in pursuit of, understanding IT at its highest level. I perceive myself to be in pursuit of mastery around money and public speaking. But we're all in pursuit of mastery at some point in time. And what I generally mean by that is that there are things that you do that you are naturally gifted at, and you have worked really hard to expand on those gifts. So whatever your level of mastery is, your boss, your teammates, your leadership, they should all know what that is. Because in every business, there is energy and there is stuff. So think about this. On your list, on your to-do list right now, that's probably sitting in front of you on Asana, or you're on a different screen with me, you're looking at that to-do list. There are things on your list that are energy, and there's things on your list that are just stuff. Meaning some of those things give you energy. At the end of the day, you're like, man, I got a lot done. I was in flow all day because you were doing things that you were masterful at. And then there's just stuff. And the stuff are things that drain you of energy. And at the end of the day, you're like, today was long and hard. And now I'm going home and I'm completely beat, wiped out because I didn't do it. I did a lot, I just didn't get a lot done, right? That's stuff. So as a leader, if you want to get people excited about the expectations you're setting, how do you set expectations that fulfill them on the mastery level? What is energy for them that you can create expectations around? And then lastly, and this is a really important topic that I believe we're covering next session, next month, but it's all about purpose. Sorry, hit a button. It's all about purpose. And purpose is the idea that the work we do matters, that what I'm doing actually has impact to the company, to the client, to the world at large. The generations coming into the workforce today, they don't want to do just a job. They want to do a job that matters. They want to do a job that has impact, that they can actually move the needle on. And so when we talk about mastery and purpose for our team is having an expectation that here's this role or goal or job or KPI that I really have expectations around you for. And this is why you are so good at creating out of the box ideas, documenting them, and then sharing them with clients, that from a purpose level, I feel like you're going to really move the needle on this. That's how I'm setting the expectation of you doing this work in a very purposeful way, leveraging your mastery, but having the autonomy to do it on your own. So if any of this resonates with you, read the book, download the audio book. This book is masterful. Okay, last but not least, before we go to some Q&A, there is this idea, again, this was posited and put forth by my father, who finished his career as an organizational development consultant at UC Berkeley. And at Berkeley, this is a $2 billion organization that was asked to cut $120 million out of its budget. Now, if you're cutting 120 million, the most natural place to do that is personnel. And unfortunately, he was tasked with the job of coming in and assessing both leaders and their teammates and figuring out who was really fully engaged in the work. And this was the model he used. Now, I'm not saying this is a litmus test for any of you that are trying to decide if you need to reduce headcount, but this is a way to identify how to really engage people at the heart level. So I think you would all agree with me that there is a difference between management and leadership. You can see this under the arrow going both ways here. Management on the left side, leadership on the right side, results squarely in the middle. And the reason results are in the middle is you can get results whether you're a manager or a leader, right? Both get results. The difference is that managers generally are focused on behaviors and activities. And my dad in his model said basically that if you are focused on behaviors and activities, what you have is you have someone's hands and maybe their head is in the game, but at the very least you have their hands. And y'all probably know that there is a Gallup survey taken every year, and it's all about engagement in the workforce. And the one this last year that was released said that 85% of the global workforce is either disengaged or actively disengaged. And what that might suggest is that the majority of them, their hands are in the work, maybe their head, still getting results, but they're definitely being managed in terms of activities and behaviors. And what that looks like in a company is, hey, we really need to talk about why that project didn't get done. Hey, it seems like you've been missing meetings or showing up late, so I really need to figure out what that's about. That's management. You have their hands in their head. Leadership looks vastly different. What that looks like is we're talking about outcomes and impact. And when you're talking about outcomes and impact, you have someone's heart. So as it relates to mastery, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, when you're talking about outcomes and impact, it's really about saying, this is the end goal. This is how you can impact that end goal. You are a vital player on this team for this very reason. So I really want to know, how can I empower and support you to make sure that happens? Meaning, what expectations do you have of me to make sure you're doing energy work, not stuff work? How can I make sure that you are actively engaged in the work and doing all of your best work so that you leave to go home every day feeling fulfilled? What does that look like? These are the conversations we start to have with people. And I'm not saying we can get to 100% of fulfillment, right? A good friend of mine says in every dream job, there is a 20% suck factor. 20% of the role sucks, no matter what. 80% could be awesome in your dream job. And in my world, that's travel. Travel delays, hotels, checking in, checking out, getting home late. There's a suck factor to be sure, but there's an 80% energy factor that's amazing. And that's what we're trying to get to more of with our teams. So hopefully these gave you some ideas. If we're getting people excited about the expectations that we're setting them together. We're creating shared ownership. We're doing it at a heart level. So we're giving them expectations that actually drive them and move them forward in their career and their life. And they're having a say in all of that because it truly is a dialogue between the two of us. The first part of the session today, really about defining what those expectations are. Here's the question that I want to leave you with. And then we're going to open it up for Q&A from all of you. And I know Brad's going to facilitate that for us. Here's what I want to leave you with. Where in your life, whether it's at home or at work, are there expectations right now that are likely uncommunicated? Where you might be getting triggered with certain things that are not happening or happening, that really is just a matter of clarifying what those things are and having that conversation, that reset button conversation with someone. Where are those? And then secondly, are you willing to have it? Like, get bold, be uncomfortable, and just say, I want to clarify and make sure that our expectations are aligned. What are yours of me? Here are mine of you. Can we identify what that looks like? From a kid's perspective, a brilliant, brilliant man that I met years ago, both of his children got full ride scholarships, one to law school, one to medical school. And I said to him, I'm raising kids that I hope to be high achievers. How did you do this? How did you inspire them or motivate them or whatever? And he said, Adam, I'm going to tell you a secret. Your kids will pretty much do whatever you expect of them, so long it's communicated. And he said, from the time we were young, we told them, sports are great, but you're going to get athletic scholarships. I'm sorry, athletic. You're going to get academic scholarships. And I want you to focus on academics because that is truly where the opportunity is going to lie for you. So our expectation is that you do really well in school. For years, I've said to my kids on the way out the door, be good to your friends, be good to your teachers, and remember, it's cool to be brilliant. And my expectation, subtly stated, was, I expect you to be brilliant because it's cool to be that way. And my kids, by and large, straight A kids, I never check their grades. My wife's in it quite a bit. I never do. I don't ever question it because I truly believe my friend's advice on that. So with that, Brad, let's open it up to some Q&A and see what's happening.
All right, we've got a couple that are already posted here. First of all, great information, Adam. I was taking some notes on the side, and again, having participated in the leadership forum last year and covered some of these topics, again, I find myself going, gosh, like you had that last graphic up there, and I see myself leaning more towards the management side than the leadership side, and it's great self-awareness and trying to uncover some of those blind spots. So thank you. I have multiple takeaways from this session for sure, and need to put them into practice and execute on them. So here's a couple questions we've got. So the first one is, does hitting the reset button undermine the work of the leaders who came before you? Doesn't that affect team morale in a negative way?
This is a great question. And Ricky, I appreciate you asking it. I think it's all in how you house or couch the conversation. So if someone before you has done a great job and you would like to continue the work that they have already started, but and I'm going to give two examples here, but in one case study example here, it might be that your leadership style is just different than theirs. So you'd like to continue the good work. It's just that the style is different. And so the conversation might go, hey, what did you really appreciate about what Brad did in this role prior to me taking the leadership reins? What did he do well? And they'll give you all those answers, right? And you'd say, what would you like to see done differently? They'll give you those answers. And then you could say, what I want to do, quite honestly, is I just want to hit the reset button and set expectations from you for me and vice versa, because I'm not Brad, but I want to keep delivering on all the things that Brad did really well if I can. So you can have a reset button without, denigrating the person that came before, because it's not like, okay, we'll scrap everything that they were doing. Now we're doing something different. Though that may be the case. And usually it's the case if the direction of that department was going somewhere you didn't want it to go. And a case in point there was, we did a very large project at KU Med Center down in Kansas City. The vice chancellor of that university had been an admiral in the Navy, a rear admiral in the Navy. And his mentality that started at the top and went all the way down through leadership was, if I want your opinion, I'll ask for it. And you can imagine, ideas did not float up through the basement to the ivory tower. They began to realize, like, well, they don't want our ideas, so I'm not going to share them. And they started losing really great talent. So the new vice chancellor of the university came in after this gentleman stepped down, and she said, we are hitting the reset button in a big, big way. And the reason she did it that way, she said, I honor the work that he did, but my vision is different than his. So we need to hit a reset button because we are going to completely turn this ship around and change the culture. We're not going to necessarily change the results we had, but we're going to change the culture to make sure that everyone feels very purposeful and passionate about the work they're doing. Because she realized that the idea was like, well, if it's good enough for government work. I mean, that was the mentality in this place. So that's where you might get a little more harsh in hitting the reset button. But for most of you, it's probably just saying, what did you like? What didn't you like? What do you expect of me as your leader? And here's what I expect of you. Let's just hit the reset button so we're all clear on that.
Yep. Good. And I know, Rick, you've got another question. I'll jump. There's another one posed here. What is the best way to lead up the chain or ask your boss to clarify expectations?
Great question. The easiest way to do this, Nick, from what I found, is to either be very point blank and say, I think I need a clarity and alignment meeting. And a clarity and alignment meeting essentially is just saying, I think there are some things that maybe I'm missing or we are off base on, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page. You'll hear me use this language a lot, clarity and alignment. Are we clear and aligned? You'll hear my team say, AC, I think we need a clarity and alignment meeting. And what that means is let's jump on a Zoom for 15 or 30 minutes and just get straight on what's so that we all know that we're going, rowing in the same direction. The second way, which is a little more roundabout, is to say to your boss, let's assume that Brad's my leader in this case. I would say, hey, Brad, I need a little bit of coaching from you. Could I get some coaching from you? I'm trying to define what the expectations on this project are. Coach me through that. What does that look like for you? And coaching is interesting because it's not like, hey, I'm challenging you. I want you to develop me as your direct report. And what better way to do that than to share what you have in mind? And I'm going to try and knock that out of the park. A mentor I had one time said, our job is to make our leaders look amazing. That's our job. And so if we can make our leaders look amazing, then we also look amazing to the leader and to higher ups in the company. So if we can make our leaders look amazing, what better way to do that than to get coaching from them on what their expectations are of us?
Good. All right, we've got another one posted here, and then Ricky, I'll get to your second one. When developing a new department with existing staff, how do you communicate to others outside your department that your team is setting new expectations for current processes?
This is a very, very poignant question. I have a client right now who went through a 1.5-day training with us where we were really defining the language that they would all be using. And one of the pieces of language that we were using was around expectation setting and really managing and meeting. And we would talk about that a lot. So in answer to the question, when developing a new department with existing staff, the thing that you might tell people to the other leaders, let's say you're in a senior leadership team or executive leaders meeting, if that is a point of order, and let's say it's an EOS, IDS, identify, discuss, and dissolve point, you might say, I really wanted to make sure everyone knows that out of my team, from time to time, you're going to hear, in order for me to manage and meet your expectations, could we clarify those? Because I think it goes without saying that our clients have expectations of us. They're probably not defined all that well most of the time. Maybe they are, but in many, many cases, what I'll find is that a client is really frustrated with a provider because that provider didn't match or meet the expectations that the client had of them. And it may have been set up front, this is our service level agreement and the SLA wasn't met. In that case, great. But the provider needs to say, hey, we need to reset and redefine some expectations because we are going to miss that SLA, right? So long as we're upfront and clear about it, what's amazing in this client example that I just gave, people began to not only expect it, but appreciate it. And if they didn't end the call with, just so I manage and meet your expectations, can we clarify what they are? They would say, don't you want to talk about the expectations? And they started teeing up the conversation, other departments, with the accounting group of this company. So anyway, I think the way to do it is to let everyone know my team is going to be doing a better job of clarifying expectations, because as an organization or a department, we want to meet and or exceed what other people expect of us. We can't do that unless we know. So just bear with us, humor us, tell us what you expect.
Yep. Okay, another one coming your way. So the question is, much of this is about changing human behaviors, which can be tricky and challenging. Some may even feel impossible. Any wisdom to share on how leaders can help teams change both individual and group behaviors that mess up the suck energy ratio, or how leaders can advance workplace culture?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, John. I think I'm going to try and incorporate the suck energy ratio in my next presentation somehow. I like that. I like that idea. Um, I do have some ideas around this. And what I'll tell you is, I think the easiest way to get started is through assessment tools. And one of the ones that we prefer is Social Styles, which is by a company called Traycom out of St. Louis. The reason I like that is many of you have probably done Myers-Briggs and DISC and profiles, the PI index, predictive index. All of those are great. They all have their purpose. The challenge is, PI has 14 or 17 different profile, personalities, if you will. Somebody could be in Myers-Briggs, an INFP or an ENTJ, but I don't know what that means in terms of how I'm supposed to relate to them. And why I like Social Styles is it's very easy to identify how we experience someone as either warm and fast, warm and slow, cold and fast, cold and slow. We know that. It's about eye contact. It's about the speed and pace of their conversation, whether they ask a lot of questions or tell you what to do. You can identify that real quickly. And when you do a Social Styles exercise, one of the things that becomes apparent is the drivers who are cold and fast often upset the amiables who are warm and slow. And usually what that looks like in a meeting is the conversation goes off the rails. The driver's like, well, this isn't about me. So they flip open their laptop or keypad and they just start answering emails. And other people around the table are like, how dare you? We're all in this meeting. Why do you think you're so special that you're going to answer emails while the rest of us are sitting here? They don't realize it's a challenge. But when you go through the Social Styles, we could do it as a 2-hour, half-day, full-day workshop. When you start doing that, you go, I didn't even realize that was off-putting to someone else. So point blank, to answer the question, how can leaders advance workplace culture? Self-awareness is key. And inside of self-awareness is, how am I triggering someone else because of my behavior? And can I manage or modify or adjust that? And, for what it's worth, there are going to be people who they will not change. They are hardwired that way. They think it's foolish to even change, and they're going to use it as a badge of honor. Yep, I'm a driver. I'm cold and fast. That's how I am. And no one's going to change me. But if we're understanding of that, we can create some strategies to deal with it at the same time. So hopefully that answers your question, John. We will talk about more of that in subsequent sessions. Not to tease you to come back, but I want you to come back, John.
I think I saw John, and he's registered for the rest of them, so he'll be around. And also, one thing I'd like to encourage everyone, whether you think of a question after the fact or you pose a question and you don't maybe get quite the clarity that you need on it, feel free to follow up with myself or Adam, and we can have an expanded conversation about this. The reality is, I guess if you reach out to me, I'm gonna connect you with Adam. But we're always willing to continue to have additional conversations outside of the leadership series. So just keep that in mind. Feel free to reach out if you have anything else that pops up or you need more clarification. So jumping back to Ricky's question, how do you incorporate clear expectation setting into your leadership style when you're in a group that is growing and constantly evolving?
Yeah, this is a great question, Ricky. For a growing, thriving organization where new bodies are being brought in all the time, point blank, some of this needs to be in onboarding. It needs to be part of your culture setting conversations when someone is brought on board. And it could even be just, here are a number of words or phrases you're going to hear from our group. And we want you to begin to incorporate some of these as part of the culture. And that could be things like clarifying expectations, meeting and managing, Am I living up to what you expected on this project? Those kinds of phrases are layered into what we do. I would say that, and again, this is kind of a point blank comment on the question, you have to do it again and again and again. So it's one thing to set expectations and then never talk about them again. It's another thing to go back to the table. My kids know, hey, we expect you to do well. You're smart kids. You are going to try hard. You're going to do well in homework. But we talk about that all the time. Every year, semester by semester, sometimes month to month, we're talking about that, where they'll say, I don't care, I got a C. I'm not going to retake the test, or whatever they're going to do. And I'll say, really? I mean, is that from an expectation standpoint? I would think you would want to, because the expectation is you get a better grade than what you got on the first blush. So you're going to have them again and again and again. And it's not only is it okay to, I think your direct reports will look forward to having them. If you get to a point where your direct reports are like, dude, clear, got it, no more, then you might have had it too much. But I'd rather have that than someone who has misinterpreted what the expectation is because I haven't had the combo enough.
Yeah, good. Great. Well, I know as of right now, there's no other questions posed. So I just, I think one of the things that I love about today's session was just there's very easy takeaways that can be implemented, with at home or at work. Just asking some of the questions, and of course the expectations thing is a huge thing. Something that people can immediately start thinking about. Are my expectations, have they been stated? And if not, then, like you said, it's pre-planned resentment. So one of the things before people jump off, I do want to mention for anyone that's participated in the series, if you are involved with a technical company and have technical positions that are open, whether it be architecture, manufacturing, engineering, part of our responsibility campaign and what we're doing right now is that any new position that's opened up over the next couple of weeks from people who participated in the series, if we're able to get the position opened and filled, we'll make a $500 donation in your name to either one of our partners, or you can have choose a partner, a charity organization of your own. But we've got recruiters that have some bandwidth available. They're eager and anxious to get some new orders, new positions in. So if you do have some things, please reach out. Let's explore the possibility of partnering and working together. And again, it would help us to expand our responsibility campaign in your name. So that's something that I wanted to throw out there here before too many people logged off. No other questions posed. So I will just say again, thank you everyone for participating. Look for the link to register for the remaining 4 sessions. It'll be once a month for the next 4 months, excluding August. So consider signing up in advance. We'd love to have you join us. Adam, any final words?
My main challenge to everyone out there is take some of the questions and go ask them of the folks on your team, ask them at home. Even tonight, one of the things I do frequently at dinner, I'll say to my wife, hey, what are your expectations tonight? And she'll say, I want to sit and watch the NBA finals, game, and I want you to rub my feet. I guarantee you she's going to tell me that, but I know it and I'm going to do it. And it makes life better, right? As a result. So make sure you're asking, what are people's expectations? Do your utmost to live up to them. And if you can't, let them know, hey, I want to manage and meet those. This might be a little more realistic. That's the best takeaway for today's session, Brad. I have on the screen the leadership series site at koniknetwork.com. All of the recordings are here. This one will be up probably within a couple of days. And our May topic is all around purpose. How do you engage people with their purpose and build why statements with your team? Super, super powerful stuff. So I hope you can make it when we have the May session as well. So Brad, thanks for the time and thanks to everyone who attended. Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. See you soon. Take care.